Hey coaches, this is Michael here from Beyond Pulse. I hope you're all doing well. I just got a really short video here for you that just walks through the data that you will see and what it all sort of looks like within the session summary emails that you receive immediately after the session. So you've synced the belts, you get an email from us instantly almost that then gives you a breakdown of the data. So I want to just walk through an example of what that looks like and just speak a little bit as to each of the sections that you see within this email. So beginning at the very top, very simple. You've just got the date, the team that trained, and how long was the session. You've then got the first metric of ours, which is active participation. This is the one that shows, okay, within the session, within the 66 minutes, how much time were the players actually active versus inactive. So here the players were active for 43 minutes and they were inactive for 23 minutes, which translates to 65% active participation for the session. Then just beneath that, what we've actually implemented here is we then give a 10-minute breakdown. So as a way for you as coaches to start reflecting on the story of how your session went, the flow of the session from minute 0 through to the end, we automatically just chunk it into 10-minute blocks, and it just paints a picture for you to see where in your session did you have the most activity versus the least. And so from this example, you can see that the most activity actually took place within the first 10 minutes. The players were active 79% of the time, almost 80% of the time they were moving, versus, whatever happened here between minute 30 and 40 could have been a longer break, could have been a transition that brought this down. But here, the group is just under 50%. And so you can start to attribute active participation to time as it relates to your session. Then just beneath that, we've got the top 2 players and the bottom 2 players. So you can see, these 2 guys had the highest AP at 78 and 71%. And again, what does that look like across the 10-minute blocks? And then the bottom 2 players that you've got here at 10% and then 49% with lower AP for the session. Moving on to the second metric, we have here the heart rate. So specifically what we're looking at, the main thing that we highlight is, again, how many minutes do the players spend working in what's called their red zone, time above 80% of their maximum heart rate. So on average, the group spent 32 minutes working in that red zone, which is just in this sort of high zone. And again, what we've added here now is we show, okay, well, how many minutes did the players spend working across all of their heart rate zones, from more resting zones that you can see here through to these higher heart rate zones that ultimately, when you add the time above 80%, you've got 24 minutes here, 8 minutes here. This is really all you're looking at in this dial is 32 minutes in total. And again, we show the top 2 players. So the top 2 players relative to their heart rate, how many minutes in their red zone, and then the bottom 2 players, same thing. Distance. So similar to heart rate, total distance covered on average for the team. We also have added this miles, what's the word I'm looking for? This miles equivalent, because this is something that we didn't have in the past and we know is important to have, the miles conversion, I should say. We've also added what was their distance per minute. And you can also then see, okay, well, this was our total distance, and then how's that broken down across the speed zones? So low speed, which is essentially kind of walking, medium speed, high speed, and then maximum speed. So you can see that for this session, a lot of their distance was spent running at low speeds. And similarly, if you go beneath that, you've got the top 2 players in terms of their distance versus the bottom 2 players and their distance. And again, where did that distance accumulate throughout the course of the session? And then finally, our workload metric, you can see here on average for the group, their workload was 14 trimps, which again is an arbitrary term, but it stands for training impulse units. It's how we measure workload. We then also show the number of sprints, and that's important because sprints really is a multiplier, if you will, of workload. Why? Because we know that when players sprint, that's the most demanding, taxing thing that they can do. Therefore, the more sprints you do, the more likely your workload is going to be high. And again, we break down the workload. Where did we get this 14 trimps from? And it's broken down throughout the course of the session. And again, to end, you've got, top 2 players and then bottom 2 players in terms of their workload for the practice. And then finally, when you scroll right to the bottom of the email, you've then just got a quick breakdown, really simple. each player that was in the session, and we just show what was their individual data points for that session. And of course, you can click on this button here, View Detailed Session. It's going to take you to the dashboard if you wanted to go see it in more depth and detail. But this was just a brief explanation, somewhat brief, of your session summary email, the new design session summary email for those of you that were used to our previous designs. And hopefully this gives you a little bit more information for you to then reflect and then ultimately take action on next time you train with your team.